We start today with a warning we thought you should hear.
I just left a classified briefing on Iran, and here's what I can say. It is so much worse than you thought. You are right to be worried. Trump administration has no plan in Iran. This illegal war is based on lies, and it was launched without any imminent threat to our nation. Donald Trump still hasn't given a single clear reason for this war, and he seems to have no plan for how to end it either. Like a lot of you, I am really angry. I am angry at what Donald Trump is doing, and I feel grief for those already killed in this unnecessary conflict. And I will keep doing everything I can to fight to end this war.
Senator Warren's alarm there, not being put to rest one bit by what has transpired today and what the administration is saying today. Today, there is a growing threat that new fronts will open in the war against Iran. A senior NATO military official tells our network that a ballistic missile launch from Iran was intercepted as it approached Turkish airspace. It was shot down by NATO air and missile defense systems stationed in the eastern Mediterranean. Any attack on a NATO nation, a NATO member, would be a major escalation in the war. It could activate our mutual defense clause, potentially pulling the 32 NATO member states into the war. Also happening today, the United States used a submarine-launched torpedo to sink an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean near Sri Lanka. Important to know this, it is the first time an American submarine has been used to launch a torpedo against an enemy ship in combat since World War II. Iranian forces are striking back. According to a New York Times analysis of satellite imagery and videos, quote, Iranian strikes conducted over the weekend and on Monday damaged structures that are part of or near communication and radar systems on at least 7 U.S. military sites across the Middle East. The targeted locations appear to indicate Iran was aiming to disrupt the U.S. military's ability to communicate and coordinate. All of this is happening against the backdrop of that $64 million question. Will there be troops on the ground at any point? Already more than 1,000 people have died in Iran. At least 10 people have been killed in Israel. And 6 United States service members have lost their lives in this war. Here is how Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth addressed the deaths of U.S. troops today.
This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality.
Thin skin doesn't get you too far. That was from a briefing he held this morning where he declared that more and larger waves of strikes deeper into Iran are on the horizon, that the United States is accelerating, not decelerating the conflict, and that, quote, we will take all the time we need to make sure that we succeed. Of course, what success looks like is a question that the administration, including Mr. Hegseth, has either failed to or refused to define publicly for the country. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs also told reporters that the U.S. military campaign will shift inland. Donald Trump's war escalating and expanding as his administration is very much sounding defensive and appearing to have no real plan that they're willing to share with the country. This is where we start today. Washington Post reporter John Hudson is here. Also joining us, former director of the CIA, our senior national security and intelligence analyst, John Brennan's here. And with me at the table, Paul Rieckhoff. He's the host of the Independent Americans podcast and the founder and CEO of Independent Veterans of America. How are you doing?
I am bracing and processing like the rest of the world, but I'm going to come back to what I've been saying to you for months since he got elected. The most important story in the world is that Donald Trump can do anything he wants with the most powerful military the world has ever seen, and nothing is stopping him. Not in that intro, which was very comprehensive. He also hit Ecuador yesterday. He hit an entirely new country. And the question is not really what is Trump going to do, because we know what Trump is going to do. The question is, what is Congress going to do? They didn't even interrupt their weekend for an emergency session when he declared war, he waged war on Iran, and 6 Americans died. They still haven't voted on Iran. and he's already on to another country. So Congress is broken. This is not working. And the question should be, can anybody do anything to stop him or even slow him down? I think that's the question for any elected leader of any party you have on this show, because he's just going all gas, no brakes, and throwing his middle finger up in the rearview mirror as they try to catch up. And he's going to go for boots on the ground because he said he will. Believe him when he says it. He telegraphs his punches. He does what he says, and it could be Cuba next.
6 U.S. service members have lost their lives. A strike was intercepted above Turkey. We're going to have Senator Blumenthal on in the next block. He said he's never been more afraid of boots on the ground in Iran. What does that mean?
I don't know. I mean, frankly, I'm tired of like the tweets and the posts and the cable news hits from all the senators who say that they're afraid or they're alarmed. The question is, what's their strategy? What is Blumenthal going to do about it? Like, is there anything he's going to do to stop boots on the ground? For the folks like Elizabeth Warren who say this is an illegal war, then impeach him. Do something to slow him down. And this is a pox on both parties. Obviously, the Republicans are in control here, but they're not even going to get a War Powers Act maybe tomorrow. Like, Congress is failing here. And I think NATO will likely get involved. We've got a full regional war now. It's not contained only to Iran. And there's no sense that this is going to slow down. It seems to accelerate. So it's a true test of our very basic foundations of democracy. If Congress can't stop him and our allies can't stop him, what can?
Director Brennan, let me just ask you, if you were sort of assessing what was happening in this country as the CIA director for the UK or for another country, I mean, what would your assessment be of where things stand here right now?
I think Paul said it very well. The fact that all of the United States' very formidable resources and capabilities in the military, law enforcement, all across the board are in the hands of someone like Donald Trump. I think a lot of intelligence chiefs around the globe are looking at the United States and saying things are really broken there. In terms of how policy is formulated, it's not. It's just something that Donald Trump decides to do. And so I think it's really quite worrisome. And I think the feeling is we're at a very dangerous point, because as Trump realizes, I think, that the war in Iran is not going the way he had hoped and wanted, this is a real mess. And how do we get out of this? And it really, aside from the fact that this is such a needless war and such unnecessary death and destruction that is taking place, as pointed out, the fact that, it's almost like an amateur show. If you really wanted to go forward with some type of regime change, you wouldn't have just had the military operations. You would have been doing a lot of advanced work in terms of coordinating with allies, in terms of, reaching into the Iranian military and trying to recruit generals and units and get them to defect as soon as the bombs started to fall, arming and equipping and, training such as the Iranian Kurds and other types of things. So there'd be a simultaneous combustion inside of Iran. As much as I don't think that should have happened at all in light of the lack of any imminent threat, it just shows that there wasn't any type of strategic planning that went on. And so it's ad hocism that's happening. And unfortunately, people like, Marco Rubio and others, they know better. But the fact that Donald Trump is leading them all around, by the ring in their noses, again, I think, the Brits and others are looking at us and saying, my God, the world has changed so dramatically because the United States is acting in such an arbitrary, capricious, and reckless manner. What is coming, ahead of us? And I do think that there are a lot of questions about, what the rest of this year and the rest of the Trump administration is going to look like.
Director Brennan, I want to read you this reporting in the Wall Street Journal to your point of, regime change is one of the rationales that's been offered up by Donald Trump. Wall Street Journal is reporting this. The son of Ayatollah Khamenei is the top contender for supreme leader. Quote, the son of Iran's slain theocratic leader is a top contender to replace his father to steer the embattled Islamic Republic in its worst conflict in decades. That's according to people familiar with the matter. He would likely opt for an even more hardline direction as supreme leader, Iranian officials and analysts say. This feels like the worst possible outcome, what has already been the loss of American treasure in the form of 6 lives, that we take someone out who's replaced by someone that the Wall Street Journal says is, quote, even more hardline as supreme leader.
Absolutely. He is. And I think he represents a real element within Iranian society, not just the government and the regime, but Iranian society. We tend to look at things through the American prism and point out all the very odious and heinous acts that Iran has committed over the course of the last number of decades, particularly since the revolution. The Iranians look at us and they say, okay, the CIA and the Brits overthrew the democratically elected prime minister, Mossadegh, in 1953. We armed, equipped, and trained the Sabak, which was the Shah's secret police that tortured and oppressed Iranians across the board. We have engaged in different types of bombing activities. We invaded Iraq. We killed Qasem Soleimani. And, we've assassinated some of them. So they keep saying, it's eye for an eye, and we can go back into history. The big question is, how do we move forward and get out of this cycle of violence and retribution? But the Iranians are looking at us and saying, boy, they're raining hell down on them. Should they just roll over and just give up? No. And I also heard that, the reports that the Israelis say that they're going to kill the next supreme leader. Obviously, it's a war on their religion in many respects as well, given the combination of religious and political leadership in Iran. So again, this is so messy. And again, I'm just aghast that a U.S. administration engaged in something like this without thinking through